know, probably the worst thing, she can't see me and I don't keep on the right time, so it makes her job hard. So good job there, Susie. All right, we are continuing our series on how to treat people, and my wife asked, you know, is it just a church? Well, we're focusing on the church, but it really applies to every area in our lives. You know, I used some broader examples politically and of leadership, and it really applies to every relationship, okay? It's not just a church, you know, world, any relationship we have, we're going to run into these different people, and we're going to have to know how to handle it. I'm going to backtrack a little bit here and a little extra on treatment of the week. I know we're talking about treatment of the strong. I'm going to finish that off, but I'm going to do a little... I'm in trouble again. Brother Frank, I said we put it back there. I can blame my wife this week. It's my fault the other week, but all right. It's my fault. I'll take full responsibility. Sorry, Brother Frank. It's too late. I'm in trouble. It's too late. All right, treatment of the week. And I'm getting this book, this lesson from Brother Hiles, and he talks about an example. He said he was praying with a young man who had a heavy burden, and the man started praying off, "Dear Lord, take away my burden." And Brother Hiles interrupted him and said, "Lord, don't do that." And that'd be very intimidating if you're praying and somebody just interrupts you in the middle of your prayer. But he said, so the young man looked up, said, "Don't you think that God should take my burden away?" And Hiles says, "No, I don't." So the man started to pray again. Okay, he's probably shaking here. Hiles is judging his prayer here. He said, "Lord, then don't take my burden away. Give me the strength to bear my burden." Isn't that something we'd say? That's how I've prayed. Help me to get through this. Hiles interrupted again and said, "Lord, don't do that." This guy's rattled. You know, this guy getting critiqued by one of the greatest preachers of his time on his prayer, and he's interrupting him, and this guy's probably shaking. He says, probably wondering, what do I pray? Hiles says, "Son, you don't get strength for your burdens. You get strength from your burdens. The burden is what makes you strong. The strongest Christians are those who have the most burdens, and they do not get strong in order to bear their burdens. They get strong because of their burdens." And it's just an interesting way of thinking about it. I've always prayed that one way, give me strength to get through this hard time. And he likens it to a young person getting a weight set for Christmas. I remember when I was a teenager and I was the string bean, and me and a buddy of mine, we were going to start a little home gym in the basement. It didn't help much, but I couldn't put muscles on a pencil. It just wasn't. I didn't get too far, but you don't look at the weights and say, "Lord, take away these weights," right? Okay, or give me the strength to lift these weights. Right? Just think about this. A little shift in your thinking. The purpose of those weights is to make you what? Strong. Okay? Very good. It seems like every time a Christian has a problem, we blame the devil. It could be just God giving us the weight set for Christmas. Different way of looking at it. Maybe you're going through something and we will God, take it away, or give me the strength. Maybe God's giving you that on purpose. Why? To make you stronger. To make you stronger. And we don't like it. It's the reason most of us don't want to work out. Why? Because it's work, because it's not fun. It hurts, okay? And then it feels good when we're stronger. But the more burdens and the bigger the burdens that the Christian bears, the stronger that he becomes. Okay? It's just a different way of thinking about it. Don't say, "Lord, take this away." God has a purpose for everything. Help me to see the purpose of what I'm going through. Okay? Don't look at how quick can I get out of it. Help me to just survive. It's, it's a tough way to say, but thank you, God, for this burden. Help me to grow stronger through this. And you look at things in your lives that you hated going through, and they made you stronger. I mentioned this before. I worked construction with Pete, Frank, and Gary, and some of you know those guys. And I came from Australia, and I grew up in the tropics, and so I came to Buffalo. I just not used to winter time. I know we had somebody from Texas, and it's just a shock to the system to come from a place where you wear shorts all year long and then come to the cold, then work out in the cold, and then have construction job, and they just picked on you all day, and just for fun, just because they're bored, not because they hated you. But, I looked at it, and the times it's miserable, you're freezing to death physically, it's tough, hard work, and mentally, anytime you mess up, they're always there to rub it in your face, and laugh at you, I look back at that, and I think it toughened me up. It strengthened me. I'm ready for the ministry now. I can handle criticism. Is that the best you got? You ever talk to Brother Frank? He can come up with way better things than that. I learned physically and mentally, and I started teaching in the school, and it's like, I was glad for that experience. Was I happy going through it? No, it wasn't fun. Okay, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore, but it gave me a tougher skin. It helped me. Burdens, those things make us stronger, okay? And we don't always just say, we make the mistake of our kids. We had a hard time, and that gave us character, and that strengthened us, but we want our kids to be have as little difficulty as possible, and everything's cushy, and everything's, we got them all, everything's perfect for them, and they've never had a tough time, they've never had to work for anything. And they can't cope in the real world. It's not, why? Because they're not strong, okay? They're not strong. They haven't had those tough experiences that parents or grandparents, my wife's grandpa went through the Great Depression. And, that was a tough time on kids, too. They didn't have food in the house, and and he was a hard worker, and he had to start working when he was young, and it strengthened and made him strong. And we have to, don't be willing to put our kids through some tough times so they become stronger. So many are weak because they bear too soon a load. What do you mean by that? Sometimes people get saved, they come to church, and we want to stick them in the ministry. We want to give them a load. Well, they've been here a couple weeks. Let's put them in a class. Let's start using them. And sometimes we can give them a load too early. Okay, the weightlifter starts off with the light weights, gradually increases the load. Okay, we don't just stick somebody in and they have all these stress and all this burden, and then it's too much, and then they can't handle it, and then they drop out of church. We have to be careful. It's just like weightlifting. We want to give them, start out with what they can handle. If they can handle that, they get more. Preacher has a kind of rule, new people, if they come for 6 months faithfully, then we'll start using them. If they've shown that they can come and they're faithful, then we'll see how they do in the ministry and then give them more. And we have to be careful we don't just throw people in too early. Some are weak because they carry too heavy a load. Okay, if you're weightlifting for the first time, you don't want to give somebody 300 pounds on the bench, right? Okay, they're going to get what? Crushed by the load. It's too heavy for them. Many Christians have taken a load that was too heavy instead of gradually working their way up with the load. We have to be careful. We don't put too much, too fast, and people can't handle it. A young man cannot get strong by trying to pick up a weight that he cannot lift. Okay, there was our Derek, a place I worked, they had a gym there and upstairs, and the guy, the foreman, the plant foreman, he had these dumbbells that were so... The biggest dumbbell he could find wasn't big enough, so he Velcroed extra weights on this big dumbbell. And I'm looking at it like that. I didn't think I could lift it with two hands. He's curling these dumbbells. I'm like, I ain't touching that. It's just out of my league. Nothing I could do. I wasn't going to lift that. But we have to be careful. So care must be taken. Many are weak because they have the wrong kind of load. Okay, I try to match, when I do the Sunday school, I try to match people with the ministry. Okay, if they don't like kids, I'm not going to throw them in a ministry with kids. If they don't like elderly, and they don't put them in with the elderly. You've got to find out where people want to work. I ask them, do you like younger kids or teens? Some are like, I hate teens and I love younger kids. Some are the opposite. They're like, I love younger kids. I just can't stand teens. You try to find the load that works for the right people. Everybody has different gifts and talents. Many Christians have been given tasks which they are not suited for. And we have to try to realize people's talents, realize what they're suited for, and put them in the appropriate ministries. They can often become discouraged and later weak. There was a need with the website. A guy who was doing it left, and there was nobody else to do it, so I did it, and I kind of figured out what I was doing. It'd take me hours and hours, and I wasn't that great at it, but I was able to do it. And then Brother George and Tom, his brother, they're just naturally computer people and graphic design people, and in a week they were able to do better than I'd done in a year. And I'm like, here, you could have it. This isn't my area. I'm not like, oh, how dare you encroach. A lot of people, we get our area, and we don't want anybody to touch our little kingdom, our little ministry. And I realized, hey, they could do way better. That's not my forte. I'm better in some areas. Computer nerd stuff is not my area. I'll leave that to Brother Winstead and George. They're the computer nerds. And I'll do other things. And we have to realize our talents, realize what areas, and put the right load on the right people. So that's just going back there with the treatment of the weak, little recap. Just go over treatment of the strong. Talked about that last week. We talked about the need for strong leadership in every area, whether it's nationally, we need strong men, okay? We need strong leaders in the home. We need strong mothers. There's nothing worse than two parents and the 2-year-old has a stronger will than the parents, and the kids running them, and they can't, the kids get more stubborn and more smarter than them, and that little kid's got them wrapped around their finger, and they're throwing a tantrum, and you need some strong parents. We need some strong fathers that are willing to stand up. Thank God for strong leaders that we have. We flounder for lack of leadership, at the same time attempt to make leadership flounder. We got to be careful we're not pulling down leadership. We should encourage strong people, okay? Encourage them. Leadership is hard. It's lonely, okay? There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of weight that you can't see when you're in charge of a church or a ministry. There's a lot of issues that we don't see. I get a little taste with the school, and I'm like, I'm not vying for pastor's job. It's just more issues, more responsibility, more problems. I get a little taste, and I'm like, I'm glad you get to handle all that, not me. But we shouldn't be pulling people down. Thank God for the strong. We must realize their humanity, okay? Realize they're not perfect. We got a lot of, my wife noticed when we were in school, she goes, we got a lot of type A leaders in the school. We could see that with the young ones. You could see at a young age which ones are the followers and which one want to boss everybody around and, run the class, and, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. A lot of churches don't have many leaders, but we need to be thankful for that. They are great men, but not perfect men. Read in the Bible and find a perfect leader in the Bible. Okay, there's a couple, but most of them, they had their struggles. Okay, they did great things, and they would mess up at times, and we have to realize that. And this isn't an excuse. We'll let him live in sin, the pastor, because he's a great leader. He can just, you get what I'm saying, But when he's outspoken, or he said something, or he didn't say please, he told me to do something, and, that type of criticism, but they're not perfect. We look at our Bible, Paul was a great man, and Peter was a great man, yet they had personal problems between themselves. I'll just read this. Galatians 2:11 says, but when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him face to face because he was to be blamed. Barnabas was a great man and Paul was a great man, but they were human. And Acts 15:36 says, and some days after Paul said unto Barnabas, let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word and see how they do. And Barnabas determined to take with them John, whose surname was Mark. But Paul thought not good to take him with them, who departed from them from Pamphylia, and went not with them to the work. And the contention was so sharp between them that they departed asunder one from another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus. And Paul chose Silas and departed, being recommended by the brethren unto the grace of God. And we don't know exactly what the contention are, but these are you got to be a type A personality to be a missionary or be a pastor, to be a leader, to take the initiative, to around the country, get support, bring your family to another country, start a church. It takes initiative, it takes drive, it takes leadership. And sometimes those people, conflict with each other. They had a sharp disagreement. In every church, there are strong men with leadership abilities. We need to support them. We should not be open to criticism and gossip. Because of their strength, sometimes they're not as likable as others. They may rub people the wrong way. Okay, we have to understand that. You want somebody that's going to get something done. They're going to be pushing people, and people don't always like to be pushed. And that's not an excuse. I have a top here. Not an excuse to be a jerk. Okay, I'm just a leader. Get out of my way. We don't like I said, we're running a volunteer organization. You have to be very nice to people, but in order to get things done, you got to push people. You got to, you're going to may rub somebody the wrong way. I realized when I took over the school, I'm like, the more you do, the more criticism you're going to get. The more decisions you make, people aren't going to like it. I had this one. I was doing grading for gym, and I had somebody complain. It should be all based on talent, and somebody said it should all be based on effort. And I'm like, well, I can't make both people happy no matter what I do. Maybe I'm right in the middle here. If they're both upset, and they were related to each other, brother and sister, different parents, and I'm like, you're not going to make everybody happy. You have to make decisions. And I was getting discouraged. I'm like, I'd rather just sit in the pew and just come, and nobody would be upset with me, nobody would criticize me, and I realized that I'm not going to do anything for God. Okay, you have to realize if you're going to step up and lead, that you're going to get criticism. People are going to have a different way of doing it, and you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. But that comes with leadership. That's the price you pay if you want to do good. And I'm like, I just wish I could sit here and nobody would criticize me. Everybody think I'm wonderful, But the more I lead, the more I teach, the more I do, somebody's going to be upset with something I do. And, I'm not trying to rub anybody the wrong way. I'm not trying to do that, but that's just how it goes. Because of their strong wills, their manner may not be as palatable as those of more gentle people. But we need them and should hold them up before the Lord and encourage them. Okay, be thankful for strong leaders. Be thankful that we have leaders. Every church has some ladies who are more zealous than others. Their manner may not be as gentle and as appealing because they are leaders. And I am grateful we have a lot of strong ladies. And we had we're having our Thanksgiving banquet. And really that was a couple different ladies. They've left, they've moved to different churches, but they ran that thing, and they told the men what to do. We were under them. I set up the chairs and that, and I did whatever they asked, and they had to tell everybody, and they did a wonderful job. Okay, they had to feed 500 people in 2 shifts and set it all up and get all the food, all the donations, get all the tables, get everything changed over. That's a huge responsibility. You got to be a tough person to tell everybody and orchestrate it and run that thing. And that's a blessing, You've got to say, hey, do this. No, and people are saying it should be 8 chairs. It should be not, You're going to offend people. You're going to upset people if you're a strong lady. But I'm glad for the strong ladies that we have. They are needed. Such leaders, Sunday school classes, direct children's choirs, organize events, and teach in the Christian school. We need strong mothers. We need strong ladies that will stand up and take these areas of responsibility. We had a lady, usually we have guys run the buses, but we had a lady do it, and she did wonderful. It was the east side, and they actually have more respect for the mothers. We're just talking about this, and when she spoke and told them, everybody listened. It's amazing. The teen boys, the big towering teen boys, when a strong lady, that's what they're used to in their lives. A lot of them don't have fathers, but a strong lady, and they just would behave. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I mentioned this. I discovered on the bus, I didn't know what I was doing, and I would say, I'm going to tell your dad, and I realized that didn't scare him. And then I realized a lot of them don't have fathers. And I'd say, I'd tell your mother, and it would be amazing. Just this teen, tough, in your face, 15, 16-year-old inner city kid, giving you grief, and they see you pulling up to home. They know they're the next stop. You say, I'm going to tell your mother that you were rude, and it's like, they're begging me not to tell their mother. I'm like, please don't tell my mother, please. They're begging me. And I'm like, this kid that was so tough a second ago, I just mentioned his mother's name, and he's just begging me, don't tell my mother. And I'm like, that's a strong lady that's got to do that. And I feel for single mothers that have to be the mother and the father, and they have to be strong. And thank goodness for strong ladies. I always enjoyed when parents came for the Thanksgiving banquet because the mothers would come. And, I never had discipline problems. If I had a couple mothers on that bus, they would get up, and even if somebody else's kid, they were acting up, they'd yell at them, and the bus would go silent. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. You want a job here? You want to help me every week? Here, you're hired. They had a respect for strong ladies. We need to thank God for those ladies who are strong and can administer areas where men would not and could not lead. School needs strong lady teachers. I've underlined not to be intimidated by them. Men, we need to be strong, but don't be intimidated by strong women. Sometimes we want the quiet, submissive woman that'll do whatever we say and never question us and never talk and just do whatever I say. And, that's great sometimes, but sometimes we get things done. Who are we going to call? Not Ghostbusters. No, that's what you were thinking. We've got to call a strong lady. I work in the school, and I have lady teachers, and I'm grateful for that. And some of them are in this room. I got to be careful, but I feel that I'm outnumbered, usually 3-1. I'm the only guy there, and I have strong teachers. And I was complaining to my wife. I'm like, they gang up on me. I have a teacher meeting, and it's 3-1, and they all start on me. They gang up on me, and I'm outnumbered, and they're all not afraid to say their opinion. And my wife looks at me, and she goes, you better be grateful that you have strong lady teachers. She goes, that is exactly what you need. That is exactly the best teachers. You don't want some gentleman that's getting run over and lets the kids do whatever they want, and somebody that's firm, in control. And it changed my view. And that's who I look for when I'm looking for a teacher. It's a strong lady that can do it. My wife's 5 foot, and she teaches the upper high school, and you got this boy who's 6'1", and he's mouthing off to her, and she's not intimidated, and she handles him better than I do. I'm getting all frustrated, and she's calm and puts him in his place, and he goes back to his desk, and I'm like, wow, how'd you do that? We need strong women. Thank God for strong women. Don't be intimidated, men. We need them. God has ordained that every organization have human leadership. Church needs a pastor, a team needs a coach, school needs a principal. We need leadership. We need strong leadership. We must choose the strong from among us to fill those positions. When chosen, they should be admired, loved, and honored. I'll say this. There's something about strong leadership. Strong people are usually stubborn. Okay, can I say that? And that's not a bad thing. We sometimes think it can be if we're stubborn in the wrong direction. I see students and they're stubborn, and I say that determined. We'll call it determined. That's a better way of putting it. I go, that's a good thing as long as you're determined in the right way, in the right direction. We can get stubborn in going the wrong direction, but when you get a determined person going in the right direction, nothing's going to stop them. And that's important. We need to foster that. It takes backbone. It takes determination to stay in church, to do right, and be faithful, and not be, not drop off. It takes determination. It takes strong people to stay in church. And I'm looking at some of the families been here 20, 30, 40 years, and that's not a weak person. That's a strong person, and that's what we need. When a team weakens the coach, games are lost. When a student weakens the teacher, he weakens his education. When a church weakens a pastor, it loses its power. And I'm thankful for our church, and it stands up for the pastor, but I hear stories about, they just don't like the pastor, and he preached on their sins, and they're going to lock him out, and, they want somebody else they can control and run, and they're going to you got to give us your sermons before you preach to see if we approve of them, and, I've heard of it, and it doesn't end well for those churches. And the congregation doesn't want a strong pastor. They want a pastor they can control and tell what to do, and God's not in that. When we don't strengthen ourselves, when we weaken the strong, We instead weaken ourselves when we weaken the strong. A submissive people is a strong people. A submissive student body forms a good school. A submissive membership makes a great team. And we have to realize that. There's areas where I'm under people, and there's areas I'm in charge. And I have to be submissive when I'm in charge. And submissive doesn't mean not giving ideas or not presenting things. It doesn't mean, you just got to shut up and never say your opinion. You can respectfully do it and still be submissive. Okay, I'm grateful for my wife. She's submissive, but when she sees a better way, she'll let me know, and I have to come around eventually, and, it takes me a while, and I realize, she was right in the end most of the time, but, don't be too proud, don't be too much of a leader that you just can't listen to anybody and you think you know it all. So understand that as well. When Satan rebelled against God, he sought to and set himself on God's throne. He hurt himself. He didn't hurt God. Okay, think about that. Think about the devil was an archangel in God's presence, okay, and he fell. All right, he didn't hurt God. He hurt himself. Followers always fall when they topple their leaders. Okay, it really, you have to be careful when you topple their leaders. This happens in church. Parents often feel there is some merit in criticizing the pastor. Let me go back to that point. Be careful. You look at some of these countries, I always wondered why, the first Iraq war, why they didn't topple Saddam Hussein. Was he a terrible leader? Yeah. Okay. Did he do torturous things? He's a terrible person, but he was a strong leader, and I read somewhere that the reason they didn't was he held that country together. Okay, and then when they removed him, what happened? All this infighting and Shia, and I'm not saying he was a good person, don't get me wrong, but they realized if we take this strong leader out, well then it's going to be chaos, and that's what happened in Libya with Gaddafi. They took him out. He was a terrible person. I'm not saying he's a good person, but what happened? It's almost worse now, and they took a strong leader out, and everybody's gangs and warfare, and it's slavery. They got slavery back in there, and I'm not saying leave all these evil tyrants in, but sometimes, when you take away a strong leader, it's even worse when there's a vacuum there in some of these countries, and we need to realize that. God was still, so don't walk away and say he thinks Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein were good people. That's not what I'm saying at all, okay? But, I'll just leave that there. But followers always fall when they topple their leaders. This happens in church. Parents often feel there's merit in criticizing the pastor. I just read that. But wounded pride, okay? We get our pride hurt. And why do people, why do we have church splits? Because I get my pride hurt, and I don't like the pastor. I could just leave, right? Wouldn't that be the best? He said something, I don't like what's going on, just leave. But what do people want to do? I want to take as many as I can with me. Why? Pastor Crone was preaching on this, and I thought that makes sense, because the more people I can convince to go with me, that must mean the more right I am, right? If I can convince half the crowd, he must be a really bad person, and I must have been right the whole time. And that's really, they feel validation if they can get more people they can get to leave with them, the better. And really, they don't understand. They've just, and then they take that attitude to another church and destroy that church, and then go to another church until nobody wants to be the pastor, and they have no leadership, or they just, most of them get out of church. But be careful of that. They want to feel justified. Perhaps it gives, just a challenge. If you think I could do a better job, go start your own church. I challenge you. Go start a church, get a building, get people, volunteer people to follow you and lead them, and come every week to hear you speak. And I'm telling you, that would change their view of the pastoral position. Okay, they don't want to do that. They just want to tear everybody down, or the leaders in their life, instead of trying to step up and, well, go show us how it's done. I don't like how he's running it. Well, go show us how to do it. We want to tear down the people that are doing something for God, and it's usually the people that aren't doing anything. Okay, it's hey, He didn't, give the exact plan of salvation. If I was doing, well, he's led thousands of people to the Lord. You haven't led anybody, but, you would go do a better job. Go show us what you got. Go start a school. Go start a church and lead it. And, you'll find it's not quite what you thought, And then you got to deal with the rebel people that want to tear you down and are criticizing you and, don't like your preaching. And we have to be careful of that attitude. Perhaps it gives them a sense of power if they can speak ill of a leader. Could not do nearly his job. Changes your perspective when you can do it. Anybody can find fault in a leader. Anybody. The Pharisees, who did they find fault with? Jesus. They can find fault with a sinless, perfect man. You don't think they can find fault with any other leadership? I mean, think about that. That was their constant. They're not. What they did was they missed the miracles and looked for something to criticize. Well, he healed on the Sabbath day. You just missed that he healed somebody? I mean, that's amazing. He fed 5,000. Well, he's eating with the sinners. You're missing the greatness, all that's accomplished to point out the negative. And if they can find fault in Jesus, good luck. You're gonna find fault. You're gonna find fault in me or Pastor B.A. or Pastor Godano or Brother Winstead. We're not perfect. But if that's all you're looking for, you'll find that all day. Okay, and I guarantee I could find faults in you. But look for the good. Look what they're doing right. Okay, and they just missed that, and they missed the whole message of what Jesus was doing, and they're so focused on the negative and the faults, what they thought were faults, but really weren't. Be careful, your children hear this ill speaking. They lose confidence in your pastor and the authorities. When you tear down your school teachers, when you tear down every authority in their life, what's going to happen eventually? It's going to come back to bite you, and they're going to not respect you because they know you're not perfect either. Don't they? They live with you every day. If anybody knows your faults, as a man, it's my wife and my kids. They'll realize soon enough how imperfect I am. Right now they think I'm amazing. They don't know any better. But they see how you are. They see that you're a hypocrite, or you do this thing and that, and you want to point out well, I don't have to listen to this guy because he's not perfect. Well, Dad's not perfect. Why should I listen to him? And we see that even with spouses. The one spouse will tear down the other spouse to the kids. They think they're getting them on their side. Eventually, what? That's going to backfire, and they're going to, be turned off. They're going to wake up and realize, hey, you weren't perfect either. You tore him down, and, they're going to lose respect for you. You don't have to tell your parents that kids that they're perfect. We're not saying that, but don't tear down authority, okay? It doesn't mean you can address issues without tearing them down in front of your kids. Be careful of that. Every time you tear down an authority in their life, you're tearing down your own authority. So be careful about that. The parents have weakened the leaders so they cannot help their own flesh and blood. Okay, we've torn down the pastor, and then their kid sees the hypocrisy in the family and leaves, and then they want to come back. Well, they have no one to go to because you've torn that man down his whole life, and they need help. We have to be careful of that. Undermine their own authority when they tear down other authorities. We should thank God for those that are strong and pray for God to give us other strong people whom we may follow and encourage and strengthen. And realize that. We are in a day and age where when you look at the history of America, you realize what? It was strong men. They weren't perfect. Rockefeller and all those Carnegie and all those men, they didn't do everything perfect. They didn't treat everybody right, but they built great things. And, even in this day and age, you got Musk and Bezos, and, they built great things that we benefit from, and then we want to what? Tear them down every chance we get. They're too rich. They got too much money. We want to take their money. They're evil now that they're rich, and we want to enjoy what they've created. I was listening to a thing on a guy talking about Elon Musk, what he accomplished. You want to talk about a leader? Go start a car company that's worth more than these other car companies. These people have been doing it for 50, 60, 100 years and do better than them. And then that's a great achievement right there. Then go build a rocket ship. Usually that's something only a government could do with all our tax money. He just does it on the fun and then go put your car that you built in your rocket ship and send it to space, I mean, that's amazing, We need men like that are willing to take risks and strong leaders, and don't tear those people down, They're great men, lift them up, and we should realize the importance of leadership, and we're trying to train leaders coming up. I tell the Sunday school teachers, you are your helper, you're trying to train them to what? Take your position, okay? We're training them, the next generation. I'm getting old, I'm falling apart, we built this church, Pastor Lou and a bunch of men and in this church, and we're getting old, and we're looking at the young generation. We're like, we got to train them. They're, our backs are, are bothering us, and we can't do all the things that we did when we were younger. It's like we got to train the younger generation to come up and be leaders, and it's neat to see that when they take initiative and they're taking over, and that's really the key to a church is young people and training them to take over. And don't be afraid. Oh, I've been doing this, and I'm not giving this over to anybody. Step back. Let somebody else come in and learn how to lead and get leadership positions. And so we need strong men. We need strong parents. We need to support strong leaders. And they're not perfect. And like I say, usually they're outspoken. You look at, I love military history, and I was thinking about it, and the Civil War. I'm not a big fan of the Civil War. It's depressing, no matter who wins, American lives are lost. There's no victory, really. It's a sad chapter, but I was looking at the leadership, and you had these weak leaders on the Union side, McClellan, and I can't remember the other one, and none of them would go fight, And then they finally got Grant, and they came to him one day. They came to Lincoln and said, he's got all these issues. He drinks, and he's got all these issues, and he looks at him and said, but he fights. They realized, hey, this guy isn't perfect, but he's doing what nobody else will do. He's standing up, and he's going after the enemy, Grant and Sherman, and the other leaders. He couldn't get them to leave their home, the base. They just wanted to build up their army, and they would never go out and fight. And Grant, he had a lot of flaws. He wasn't perfect. He'd go out and fight. Okay, and that's what he needed. You study World War II, and you had some of these generals that were too scared to fight and weren't aggressive, and you got Patton, okay? Was he the nicest guy? No. Would he cuss, and would he, did some things, slapped some soldiers he shouldn't have done? He got in trouble for that. But you know who the enemy feared? The Germans feared Patton, okay? They were deathly afraid of him because why? He took the fight to them. He was a strong leader, and that's what won the war, is strong leaders. And I'm not saying that's an excuse to be a jerk and, slap some people. I'm a leader. I just can't help it, That's I'm sorry, you're just offended. It's just because I'm such a strong leader, We can be nice and be a strong leader, and that's something we can work on, But, don't be thankful for strong leaders. That's what built this country, built this church. We need strong parents for strong families, and lift them up, lift the authorities up in our lives. We'll leave it there. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us strong men, dear Lord, and strong leaders that are willing to stand up and help us to support them, dear Lord, and not criticize and not tear them down, and help us to desire to be leaders and take over and do things for you, dear Lord. And we love you. We thank you for all that you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen. You're dismissed.